Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to admit, when I first looked at the stack for today, I thought we were going to have a pretty standard conversation about health. Stress is bad, sleep is good, that sort of thing. But then I started reading this paper from ArcThef on consciousness and language, and honestly, it kind of broke my brain a little bit.
It is a heavy one. It's not every day we mix neurobiology with existential philosophy.
Right. We are looking at a really weird intersection today. We have sources ranging from clinical studies on cortisol to somatic sex education reports and even some case studies on chronic pain.
Yeah.
And the mission, as I understand it, is to figure out why the thing that is supposed to be the ultimate stress reliever, intimacy, sometimes ends up triggering a full-blown panic response in the body.
That is the core contradiction. We're culturally conditioned to think of sex as this great escape, a way to blow off steam.
Totally.
But for a significant portion of the population, the nervous system sees it as a threat. We're going to try to decode that circuit board today.
Okay, so to get there, we have to start with the hardware. I think most listeners know the basics of fight or flight, but one of our sources, labeled Chapter 12, it breaks down the autonomic nervous system in a way that feels, higher stakes than I realized.
Sure.
Can we walk through the actual machinery here?
Yeah, so think of your autonomic nervous system as the operating system running in the background. It has two primary modes.
Okay.
You have the sympathetic branch, which is your mobilization system. That's fight or flight. It's gas to the floor. High alert.
It's a classic running from a bear scenario.
The bear, the tiger, or, the angry email from your boss. The body doesn't really distinguish between them.
Right.
Then, on the other side, you have the parasympathetic branch. This is the rest and digest mode. It's the brakes. It's where repair happens.
Okay, so gas pedal and brake pedal. Simple enough.
Yeah.
But here's the part that surprised me in the reading. The parasympathetic system has a nickname.
It does. Biologists often call it the feed and breed system. And that nickname tells you everything you need to know about priority. When you're in sympathetic mode fighting the bear, your body deprioritizes everything that isn't essential for immediate survival.
So digestion gets cut.
Digestion stops. Immune function slows down. And, crucially, for our discussion, reproductive function is completely sidelined.
Right.
If you're running from a tiger, stopping to procreate is a terrible survival strategy.
That makes perfect sense evolutionarily. You don't want to be distracted.
And it's handled by the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. When your amygdala senses a threat, it just screams at the HPA axis to dump cortisol into your bloodstream.
Right.
And cortisol is a mobilizer. It moves blood from your organs to your legs so you can run. It physically unplugs the machinery needed for arousal.
Okay, so that's the broad strokes. But I want to get into the weeds for a second because I found this thread from Reddit in our source stack where a pharmacology expert pointed out something that feels like a design flaw.
The gas and brake paradox.
Yeah. They were pointing out that an erection or, general arousal in women is a parasympathetic function. You have to be relaxed.
Right.
But the end goal, the climax, is a high-energy event.
It creates a very delicate tightrope walk. You're right, the initial phase of arousal is strictly parasympathetic. You need to be in rest and digest for the blood vessels to dilate.
Okay.
If you're stressed, if you're in sympathetic mode, the blood is in your legs, not your pelvis, the engine won't even start.
So you have to be chilled to start the car.
But, and here's the kicker, ejaculation and orgasm are sympathetic functions. They require a sudden switch to the fight or flight system, the heart rate spike, the muscle tension.
Wait, so you have to be totally relaxed to get going, but then you have to almost panic, biologically speaking, to finish.
In a controlled way, yes. You need the brake to start and the gas to finish. If you have too much stress initially, you never get the erection or lubrication.
Right.
But if you have too much parasympathetic activity all the way through, you might just fall asleep.
That sounds incredibly difficult to coordinate. It's like trying to pat your head and rub your stomach while running a marathon.
It highlights why stress is such a libido killer. It's not just I'm distracted. It is that your nervous system is jammed in the gas pedal position, making the mechanics of arousal physically impossible.
Which brings us to that study from the NIH. This was the one that really highlighted how broken the system can get for some people. They took 30 women, put them in a lab, showed them erotic films, and measured their cortisol.
A classic stress test, but with a twist.
And for most of them, the study called them decreasers. It worked like we expect. They watched the film, got aroused, and their cortisol went down.
Right.
Sex equals relaxation.
Exactly. For those women, the feed and breathe system took over and the stress hormones dropped. But then you had the increasers.
The 9 out of 30, that's almost a third of the group.
It's a big number. And for these women, the sexual stimuli didn't lower their stress. It caused their cortisol to spike.
So they are watching something that is supposed to be pleasurable, and their body is reacting like threat. Threat. Threat.
Exactly. And the consequences were clear in the data. These increasers reported significantly lower desire, lower arousal, and lower satisfaction in their daily lives.
I feel like we need to pause on that because
All
it's
right.
kind of tragic. You have people who probably want to be intimate, but the moment they try, their body floods them with anxiety juice.
It creates a nasty feedback loop. If your body responds to arousal with a cortisol spike, that cortisol inhibits the physical response, the lubrication or swelling.
Right.
Then you notice that your body isn't responding, which stresses you out more. Now you have performance anxiety on top of the biological reaction.
And did the study author speculate on why this happens?
They mentioned potential past trauma, but also just general anxiety or self-focus if you're worried about how you look or if you're doing it right or if the researchers are watching you.
You flip the switch to sympathetic.
You're no longer feeding and breeding, you're surviving a social threat.
This connects directly to the brain scans we looked at from medical news today. I want to understand the wiring here. When things are going right, what does the brain look like?
When it goes right, we see a very specific seesaw effect. As stimulation increases, blood flow floods into the insula.
Okay.
The insula is the part of the brain that processes raw sensation, temperature, touch, internal body states.
Okay, so the feeling center lights up.
But simultaneously, blood flow drains out of the amygdala.
The fear center goes dark.
It has to. You can't be fully surrendered to the sensation if you're scanning for threats. Successful arousal literally deactivates the brain's alarm system.
But for the increasers.
The alarm never shuts off. The amygdala stays active. It overrides the insula.
Okay, this is where I want to bring in that Ericsif paper. Because up until now, we've been talking about hormones and brain parts. But this paper talks about why the amygdala might stay on. And it gets dense. It talks about word patterns versus self patterns.
It is a dense paper, but the core idea is pretty profound. The author argues that what we call the self, our identity, our ego, is basically a construct of language. It's a story we are constantly telling ourselves.
The narrator in the head.
The narrator. And that narrator has a job to maintain your social status.
Yeah.
It is constantly asking, am I doing this right? Do they like me? Do I look stupid? That constant monitoring is the self pattern.
And that guy is the worst. I mean, he's useful at a job interview, I guess.
Yeah.
But in the bedroom.
In the bedroom, he's a disaster. The paper suggests that the self pattern is inherently anxious because it is always judging. If you're stuck in the self pattern, you are analyzing the sex, not experiencing it.
The paper used a term that sounded super academic.
Yeah.
Minimal phenomenal experience.
Yeah.
I had to read that paragraph like 3 times.
It's a mouthful, but think of it as flow state.
Yeah.
Have you ever been playing a sport or maybe listening to music and for a few seconds you forgot you existed?
Oh, yeah.
You weren't you anymore. You were just the action of running or hearing.
Yeah, totally. Or like when you're driving on the highway and realize you haven't thought for 10 miles.
That is minimal phenomenal experience, MPE. It's consciousness without the self pattern.
Okay.
And the author argues that this is the goal of intimacy, to shut up the narrator and just be pure sensation.
So the increasers from the study are people who can't shut up the narrator.
They're stuck in the self pattern. They're analyzing the experience. Is this working? Am I okay? Instead of feeling it. And that analysis keeps the amygdala online.
So if the problem is that we are stuck in our heads, thinking in words, judging ourselves, what's the fix? Because just stop thinking is terrible advice. It never works.
You can't just delete the pattern. You have to replace it. The paper talks about mindful patterns, and this segues perfectly into the report we found on somatic sex education.
Okay, I have to be honest here. When I saw somatic sex education in the source list, my skeptical radar went off a little bit. It sounds a little woo-woo.
I get that.
Like cuddle therapy or something.
It can definitely sound that way, and the legal gray area doesn't help. In some places, like Canada, it walks a fine line because it involves touch and money.
Right.
But if you look at the actual methodology, it's surprisingly clinical. It's not about sex in the recreational sense. It's about nervous system retraining.
The source mentioned a tool called the Wheel of Consent. I thought this was interesting because we usually think of consent as just yes or no. But this breaks it down into doing versus done to. Why is that distinction so important for the brain?
Because in a typical sexual encounter, those lines are blurry. You might be kissing your partner, which is doing, but you're also monitoring their reaction to see if they like it, which is analyzing. Or you're receiving touch, but you feel pressure to moan or move to show you are enjoying it, which is performing.
So you are never just receiving. You are always managing the other person's experience.
And that management keeps the self-pattern active. You're worrying about the other person. The wheel of consent exercises and things like somatic sex education, they force you to separate them. Yeah. One of the core practices is, for the next 10 minutes, you are only going to receive. You are not allowed to reciprocate. You just have to feel.
That sounds harder than it looks.
It's incredibly hard for people. We're wired to reciprocate. But by removing the obligation to give back, you give the amygdala permission to stand down. You're safe to just feel.
There was a DIY version of this in the Hum Nutrition source. The hand touch exercise. It seemed almost too simple.
It is deceptive. The instruction is to touch your own hands together for 2 minutes. But for the first minute, you focus only on the hand being touched. What's the temperature? What's the pressure?
Right.
You treat your hand like an object receiving data.
And then you switch.
Then you switch your brain to the hand that is doing the touching. Feel the texture of the skin under your fingerprints. It forces your brain to toggle between input and output.
It's an attention drill.
It is. It trains you to inhabit the insula, the sensation center, rather than the word pattern. If you can learn to do that with your hands, you can eventually learn to do it in more high-stakes, intimate situations.
So let's say we do the work. We try the hand exercise, we practice mindfulness, we manage to tell the narrator to take a coffee break. What's the payoff? Why is it worth rewiring our brain for this?
The biological reward is huge. When you finally hit that flow state, that minimal phenomenal experience, the brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals that are arguably the most potent medicine we can produce.
We know oxytocin, that's the cuddle hormone.
It's the anti-stress hormone. It scrubs cortisol out of the bloodstream. It lowers blood pressure. Then you have endorphins, which are natural painkillers.
But the one that caught my eye was prolactin. The Reddit thread had a really funny but fascinating point about this.
The postcoital nap hormone.
Yeah. Apparently prolactin surges after orgasm and basically knocks you out. But the source said intercourse releases 4 times more prolactin than masturbation.
The data suggests that. It implies that the biological feedback loop of connecting with another person amplifies the chemical release. It's a mission-accomplished signal that tells the body it is safe to power down completely.
So that coma you fall into afterward isn't just exhaustion, it's a chemical bath.
It is deep restorative recovery. But I think the most powerful example of this chemistry wasn't the sleep study, it was the pain study, the case report from Silo.
Oh, this was wild. Tell the listener about the patient.
So they had a patient with what they called refractory chronic facial pain. That basically means her face hurt constantly, severely, and no drug was touching it. They tried the heavy stuff, opioids, anticonvulsants, nothing worked. Her nerves were just firing pain signals nonstop.
It sounds like a living nightmare.
It is. And since standard meds failed, the doctors tried something experimental. They administered a mix of synthetic oxytocin and a hormone called Relaxin.
I still can't believe Relaxin is a real medical name. It sounds like something from a late-night infomercial.
It does, but it's real. It's usually involved in pregnancy to loosen the pelvic joints, but in this case, they used it to target the nervous system.
And it worked.
And it worked. The combination of these intimacy hormones shut down pain pathways that morphine couldn't touch.
That is unbelievable. So we aren't just talking about feeling good. We are talking about chemicals powerful enough to override severe neuropathic pain.
It shows that this system, the feed-and-breed system, isn't just a side project for the body. It is a primary regulation system. When we activate it, it heals us. But when we're stressed, when we're increasers, we're locked out of that pharmacy.
So to bring this all together, we have a bit of a vicious cycle. The stress of modern life and the self-pattern voice in our heads keeps us in sympathetic mode.
Right.
That blocks us from intimacy. But intimacy is the one thing that could actually break the stress cycle.
That is the catch-22. You need to relax to have sex, but you need sex to relax.
So the way in is the mind. It's recognizing that the voice in your head, the one worrying about your emails or your thighs or your performance, is biologically blocking you from the good stuff.
You have to view that voice as a physiological barrier. It's not just annoying. It is keeping your cortisol high.
I love the idea from the Arxiv paper about the self being a construct. It's kind of liberating. It implies that you are the thing standing in the way of your own pleasure.
It does. It suggests that the most intimate act isn't finding yourself, it's losing yourself. It is leaving the agent self, that busy, anxious manager, outside the bedroom door so the body can do what it evolved to do.
A vacation from the ego.
Yeah.
Honestly, that sounds better than the orgasm itself sometimes.
They usually go hand in hand.
Fair point. Well, this has definitely changed how I'm going to look at my own stress levels. If you're listening, maybe take 2 minutes today and just feel your hands.
Yeah.
See if you can turn off the narrator for a bit.
It's a good place to start.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.